Welcome, friends, to the Sunday meeting of Washington, D.C. ULT Lodge. Today we have a once a month in-person meeting, and the topic that will be covered in the talk will be evolution of soul. The United Lodge of Theosophists is upholding the objectives of the Theosophical movement, the three key objectives, and I would like to repeat it. It is to form the nucleus of universal brotherhood of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, caste, or color. The study of ancient and modern religions, philosophies, and sciences, and the demonstration of importance of such study. And the third objective of the Theosophical movement is the investigation of unexplained laws of nature and the physical powers latent in man. The talk today will be followed by a reading of Gita. And next Sunday, we'll continue with the reading of the Ocean of Theosophy and with a discussion. So we would like to start with the reading. This is extract from the Upanishads. Veil then, O Gautama, I shall tell thee this mystery, the old Brahman, and what happens to the self after reaching death. Some enter the womb in order to have a body. As organic being, others go into inorganic matter, according to their work and according to their knowledge. He, the highest person, who is awake in us while we're asleep, shaping one lovely sight after another, that indeed is the bright, that is Brahman, that alone called the immortal. All worlds are contained in it, and no one goes beyond. This is that. As the one fire, after it has entered the world, so it becomes different according to whatever it burns.
Get your headphones. I can hear it. Yeah.
Becomes different according to whatever it enters and exists also without. As the one air, after it has entered the world, so one becomes different according to whatever it enters. So the one self within all things becomes different according to whatever it enters and exists also without. As the sun, the eye of the whole world is not contaminated by the external impurities seen by the eyes, so the one self within all things is never contaminated by the misery of the world, being himself without. There is one ruler, the self within all things, who makes the one form manifold. The wise who perceives him within their self, to them belongs eternal happiness, not to others. The sun does not shine there, nor the moon and the stars, nor these lightnings, and much less this fire. When he shines, everything shines after him by his light, and all this is lighted. And now we'll continue with the talk.
Thank you, friends. Evolution of the soul. Many people believe that they have a soul. Others believe they have no soul. But scarce any have reached the point, evolution of the soul, as to possess the knowledge that they are soul. In modern science, the word soul is distinctly absent. In religion, soul is considered something of some kind of a possession which may be given to a man or taken from him. Laying aside all attempts at defining the word soul, we revert to the simple fact: we are life. We never were anything but life. We never will be anything but life. We are life in three aspects: life in a form, life which is partly informed, and life seeking to add to our information. Whether we say informed life, which means mind or soul, or that we are in a form, which means matter, or that we are still engaged in acquiring information, we must not forget that at all times we are life. Evolution of the soul, then, could only mean a certain form and development of life, which is ourself. That form is external and physical. It is internal or metaphysical, and it is substantial. That is, life is out. So life is that out of which both the external and internal are evolved. What people generally call God or deity is one aspect of life. The omnipresent principle, which visibly functions in the atom as in the cosmos, and which abides as a soul in the heart of every creature. Another aspect of life is the law. People speak of the laws of God and the laws of nature. It would be more accurate to speak of God as law. God, life, self are not different from law. They are law. Once the human is evolved through this law, the evolution of the soul takes place by active choice during life. Passive assimilation after death. Therefore, we call life as humans the period of choice. Chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita makes reference to the tree of life. This is the sacred tree of all scriptures, whether regarded physically or as intelligence. Our own growth and the growth of everything in nature is like the growth of a tree. It begins from a seed, from another tree. This seed draws from the invisible elements contained in the soul or planted, and by some power of transformation in itself converts the invisible into the visible. It converts that which was alien to its own nature, into something homogeneous with it. There is a physical growth from conception to manhood. There also is mental growth from the first impression received by the newborn child to the mind of Shakespeare or Newton. Growth from seed to tender plant to a sapling, to foliage and flowering, and to the reproduction of a fresh crop of seeds. If we picture the nervous system of the body and then turn our picture upside down, we shall perceive that here is a perfect tree, a tree denuded of all foliage. Hence, the symbol of a tree represents the evolution of the soul. This evolution begins in the highest state of life, and that's spark from the oversoul, not the lowest. Likewise, it ends in the highest state. The wide difference between theosophical teachings and those which pass for religion and science may be seen in this. All life is an evolution from the Supreme Spirit, and at the close of any period of evolution, it returns to the Supreme. The whole purpose of evolution, and failing to point out all this. So we've covered this so far. The purpose of man is the purpose of evolution is that man shall realize the Supreme Spirit in himself through the only means by which any realization was ever gained by any being: experience, action, contact, transformation. So, number 4, science and religion on perfection and evolution. Science would have us believe that perfection is a product of imperfection. Religion, that imperfection is a child of perfection, whereas both are the outcome of life, the evolution of the soul. Thus, the body of man represents physical evolutionary perfection so far achieved. Yet the widely prevailing view regards man as an evolution from protoplasmic slime, that is, out of inner perfection, arises self-mobile perfection. To accept that possibility is to accept a miracle. Although the terminology of science differs vastly from that of theology, the terminology in both is the same. Both believe in miracle. Considering ourselves physically, number 5, chemical elements have their classes and laws and ways of combining, so that it is impossible, granted the conditions for chemical union, to prevent it, and equally impossible to procure it, unless there is something in the elements which compels them to unite. This is a kingdom of forces regarded independently of our intelligence or any other intelligence, the far known. The mineral kingdom. This is the next kingdom. Now pass over to the natural diet called the vegetable, number 6. Here is the vegetable kingdom is superimposed life. It is some kind of an informed life which enters into the so-called chemical elements and produces a class of combinations and activities not possible to the chemical elements themselves. But this does not imply the annihilation of the chemical elements. It means 2 forms of life, consciousness or action, in the simple space in identical conditions. Examine the example of a tree. Its bark, fiber, leaves, and we shall find chemical elements when analyzed, just as much subject to their own laws, while in the tree as in the free air, or in the water, or in the mineral. Now superposing the 3rd kind of life, which informs the vegetable kingdom, and we have what we call number 7, the animal kingdom. Its cell reproduction and blood circulation are purely vegetable processes, yet the cells and sap of blood in a human animal body have an immense range of action and power, not in the vegetable kingdom and not in the mineral or the chemical kingdom. There we have the 3 kinds of life. Life, which is a form, and number 8 is where we're at now. Life, which is a form purely, mineral or chemical. Life, which reforms it, builds it up and sustains it, which is self-operative. And then the vegetable kingdom, and within that, a 3rd informing life, able to see, hear, touch, smell, taste, and devour. That is to bring into being an entirely new method of self-sustaination. All animals all animal beings have an organized life. All vegetable beings live an unorganized life. Unorganized or mineral life lives yet in the forces of nature. That is why our science tells us that if matter is reduced to the ultimate, it is no longer matter, but an infinity of centers of energy. When energy is asleep, we call it matter. inorganic manner, that is. When it is informed by a higher state of life, we call it vegetable. When it is informed by a still higher state of life, we call it animal. Then we come to number 10, that mystery in great nature, which is ourself. The three elemental kingdoms of mineral, vegetable, and animal life have been aroused to independent, aggregate, and cohesive action, producing at last a single form which all the elemental energies of life may enter and have play. Here, number 11, here is gestation or incubation point in the evolution of soul. Life is a supreme spirit. Within its life itself, life gives rise to forces. These unite and separate and unite, and the mineral kingdom emerges. Then the more intelligent of these centers of energy inhabit the mineral kingdom, and the vegetable develops. Then a still more highly evolved center of energy inhabits that, and the result is the animal. A period of quickening arises in the womb of nature. It now becomes possible for a highly evolved being, a soul, which has already in ages past been through the kingdoms of forces of mineral, vegetable, and animal over and over again, and emerged therefrom so that no longer can it be caught and held in those kingdoms to enter this threefold form. Number 12, then there is self-conscious man. Is it any more remarkable to think of a modern, more highly evolved life in an animal form than it is to think of a more highly evolved life entering a vegetable form, a mineral form, a force entering matter? We use our brain to think with. It is a mental or metaphysical camera taking negatives that is getting impressions and memories. Constantly, we are developing these negatives, retouching them, and printing from them. These are our imaginations. While this thinking is going on in the body, it does not in any way interfere with the fact that animal consciousness continues working in that body at the same time, along with vegetable consciousness and chemical consciousness, within which the kingdom of energy also operates ceaselessly. So it is one form of life within another form of life, within another form of life, within another form of life. Reverse the picture, and a vastly higher and more intelligently evolved soul than ours as yet unborn brothers, which constitute our senses and our body, can use our imagination to put ourselves in a position, say, of the life which inhabits any one of the cells of our body. Its form is absorbed in our form. We know its form, but it does not know ours. Its consciousness is now absorbed in our consciousness. We know just how that cell works, but it does not know how we work. Its power are absorbed in our power. We know this is so, the cell does not. Now in a moment, we can see how nature builds up and her aggregates add. Then her magic absorbs the lesser and the greater without any way destroying or interfering with the lesser. We have the riddle of existence upon us, open to us. Can we not sense the possibility of perfect forms of life, or souls which no longer are obliged to dwell in bodies of any kind, which inhabit minds? And can we not see how it is possible that single beings perfected with all souls exist whose single mind embraces the mind of all humanity, which is the perfected person? What we need to do primarily is to recognize the fact of the divinity of all of life. That number 14, that all life is fundamentally immortal, that all these forms, physical and non-physical, are mere scaffoldings that the evolving soul constructs as it mounts the ladder of self-realization and acts accordingly. Then what we call ethics, morality, and virtue take on an entirely different meaning from those assigned to them by religion, science, and our schools. Number 14, virtue, morality, ethics, justice, consideration, service, compassion, unselfishness. These become the law of soul evolution. We cannot injure any part of our nature without injuring ourselves. For nature is one. We cannot injure any fellow being without injuring ourselves. For consciousness is one. We cannot gain spiritual knowledge without by the recognition that man has two natures, mortal and immortal, and capable of infinite expansion. The time comes for the man who follows that path taught by theosophy when he experiences a change of the state of consciousness within himself. Number 15, between us and such beings as Jesus, Buddha, the masters of H.P. Blavatsky, and HPB herself, the difference is a difference in a state of consciousness. The whole of human consciousness can be absorbed in a higher state in which it becomes a mere function, a mere quality or attribute. It is perfectly well known that such beings can talk in any language, for instance, without ever having learned it, providing the person addressed knows that language. How can that be, you may ask? They use his brain, his knowledge. It is an established fact that they can enter into the consciousness of any man, just as we can identify ourselves for the time being with the lower kingdoms in our own bodies, or can partly put ourselves into the place of another human being through our sympathy and experience. There comes then a change in the state of consciousness of the man. It is the same ego, but he has a new mind. In what sense is it new? His mind, like a mirror, will reflect the true nature of whatever he turns it towards. This is the illustration in physical nature of the perfected soul in metaphysical nature. The moment we begin fully to live for the whole of life, the whole of life mirrors itself in us. The moment we begin to think of the whole of life, universal intelligence mirrors it in us. The moment we begin to regard ourselves not as a temporary collection of organs, but as the root, the substructure, and substratum of all forms, then all forms that ever have been, existed, exist perfectively in us. Because number 16, we are the origin of all forms, the atom, the self of form. 17, it is possible for man to learn in a way not known now. What we have already learned in that way is shown in every new birth. We already have that kind of knowledge of the chemical elements. The growing fetus absorbs of the world about it only those elements which it regards for the purpose of developing a body of flesh. It absorbs that what it needs from the vegetable kingdom and from the animal kingdom. It absorbs that collective like aggregate called the human body. What does it absorb from the metaphysical nature? It absorbs the mind by induction. A child is born without ideas, but with a magnetic power to attract them. If we, number 18, turn our thoughts to the eternal, if we turn our love to the whole of life, if we turn our ideas of happiness to the performance of beauty, if we turn our mind into an instrument of reflection of how best to apply the powers, functions, faculties, body, and circumstances in which we find ourselves, we then set up a current of induction with all the evolved beings who constitute in their collectivity the Supreme Spirit, whereupon must open up to us that vista and that vision which all the sacred books describe, realization of the Supreme Spirit. This is the evolution of the soul. There's some statements from the theosophical movement which adds to our knowledge to this, our understanding of this. The mind is the instrument of the soul, and therefore properly subservient to it. But the soul requires the mind in order to manifest on this plane and to attain concentration. But number 19, the mind must be thoroughly united with the soul before self-knowledge, interior illumination is achieved. The ultimate conquest of this high peak of progress demands not only protracted striving, but also struggles upward, many times renewed. The voice of the silence tells the beginner to seek to blend the mind and the soul. Even temporary success in uniting them as a daily earnest self-examination in the light of our highest perspective makes it possible to see honestly and to judge impersonally not only our words and deeds, but also our feelings and our thoughts. Number 20. The will is described in the ocean of theosophy as the greatest power in the human assemblage of complicated instruments. It is potentially all-powerful, being the very force of spirit in action. But it is, like the mind, properly an instrument of the soul's use, for the soul's use. It cannot do its work if the imagination is at all weak or untrained. Whereas the will got guided with the ordinary man by desire, it's guided by desire. In the depth case, the will is guided by buddhi, manas, and atma, which is the highest within people, including in its operation the force of a pure spiritual desire acting solely on the law of duty. Mr. Judge talked about duty a lot. Mr. Crosby calls the, quote, the real and true will, the spiritual will, which flies like light and cuts all obstacles like a sharp sword. If we realize that we are spiritual beings and they think and act in the right direction, at once the spiritual will begins to work. The power of concentration is strengthened. The feeling of our responsibility grows. The whole nature begins to change, to be transformed. The great transition is going on. Each one, HPB said, makes himself in the image of his desires. Unless he creates himself in the likeness of the divine through his will, the child of light. The greatest choice on the part of the soul is when it chooses to mold and to shape its own fate. When it chooses to think about a particular noble and spiritual line. The lives of most people are purposeless. The lives of some people have a narrow and selfish purpose. Only a few souls choose to make their own purpose the great purpose. Theosophy teaches that the human cycle of reincarnation, which decides the fate of the soul, has for its greatest influence the perception by the soul that it, and none else, is the maker of destiny. The conviction is the starting point of success. Without it, the soul goes round and round, yogas and calipers, starting in the web of karma, holds a prisoner and a slave. From the study, the Niceness of Veil, which is another talk in itself, we find that esoteric philosophers held that everything in nature is but materialization of spirit. This student gathers that once a human, we're the main on trial that's in this life. Until we take advantage of the opportunity to uplift ourselves and collectively, when we do that, we help create nature as well to the next level, and the levels to come are infinite. So that's the conclusion of the talk. We can open the floor to talk about it further. Sounds like everybody's got it. Well, it's easy to say. It's very difficult to get all this in the practice of our lives. You have a comment?
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting how it was very clear from the talk about the one life. Because sometimes when you say that we're all one, it's difficult to picture how we can be all one, because we're all very different, very separate, very distinct. But when you say there is one life that goes through all of us, you suddenly can relate to anything, to a stone, to a flower, to an animal, because they experience the same life. So that unifying force is easy to relate and say, yes, we're all one because we're all experiencing life.
Right.
It was very
You also heard that the masters operate on in just the three top parts in operating mind, where we and our personality to deal with this is not perfected. So that's the reason for the great division you see among people, and that's what we're working on, to getting ourselves to position a better position to improve all life. As well as we try to improve ourselves, and by doing that we improve all life. So that's our mission.
And then another sort of thing on the mind that has to be united with the soul. Because when you look at our separation, it all comes from the mind, because we imagine things and we start believing in things we imagine, and we create realities separate from the ultimate reality. So what does mind unite when it's not united with the soul? Where is it spinning, in what separate universes, when we're thinking all the crazy thoughts with which we create our reality?
You're asking a question that answers itself. Is our personalities getting involved and separate nature, and it gets in the way. Or if we control that, that's when we improve ourselves and others. So that's the difference between us and the masters. So now that we know, we can all be masters, right? Yeah, but it takes lifetimes. We all know that. But we students of theosophy realize that it's a matter of one life situation. We drop our bodies and we go through the Galacon stage, and then we appear and continue our different bodies, and with different bodies, as we would say. So it's a vast theory. It's more than a theory. I mean, I think this is a teaching, a practice, a facts that we need to try to live by. But someone have a question out there? The pictures are very small. We got a lot of.
How can you distinguish between soul and spirit in the context of your talk?
I think that's a fine line, as far as I can tell.
Okay.
Spirit is out there, the great spirit, and so forth. Soul becomes more individual. So if you're in line with the general spirit, then that's where the masters are. Where we now get our personality, it interferes with us being, in that vein all the time. When it says that even if we temporarily get in line with it, meditation and so forth, it's a help. That's what we encourage you to do, is encourage you to meditate and think about all these principles, all these things that impersonality and things like that, and inculcate that in our lives through processes of becoming, to improve everything around us. And so becoming, we will become a master if we steadfastly stay on this path. And at that time, we can make a decision of whether we want to come back and help humanity, or go out into the spiritual world and work in that area, and not come back.
You also talked about the 3 forms of life. Can you maybe revisit that?
The 3 forms of life?
Yeah.
Which is chemical. This is the animal, and matter of the plant,
Mhm.
and the animal being a higher animal, which is us,
Mhm.
and it goes from there. We're embodied. We have an animal body, if you will.
Yeah.
We have a higher mind that an animal doesn't have.
Mhm.
They have instinct. We have reason.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. See, well, we have plenty of time if you want to talk about any other points.
You mentioned about reality. And reality,
Right.
in a very earthly kind of way, is what my senses tells me about my surrounding, right? So my reality now is you standing in front of me. It's my eyes tell me you are there, right?
Yeah. The way I see reality, yeah, that tree out there is a tree. It's really a tree. But if we look at it from a broader perspective, it is more than just a tree. And if we look at our behavior, that is reality. However, that is what gets in our way sometimes because we're selfish. Have that tendency to take care of ourselves only. And that, to me, is reality. That is what we're doing, but we're going on the wrong track. The reality is when you get above all that, and you working within that high triangle, unorganized, which we all can participate in. That is a part that goes from life to life to life, and that is the part that we breathe in this world and so forth. That's what we are working toward becoming, ever becoming. It says.
Yeah, I guess taking a little step towards that from my perception. You're in front of me.
So your perception,
Yeah, my eyes tells me you're in front of me,
uh-huh.
and I hear you.
Uh-huh.
So my consciousness tells me that the combination of me looking at you and listening to you, and being in a room where other people are listening to you, tells me you're real, right?
Uh-huh.
That's very basic.
The real
That's very
is
basic. That's very basic.
all this teaching.
Yeah, I'm trying to go step by step.
Uh-huh.
So the next thing is, I can tell by you talking and expressing, let's say, knowledge, right?
This is words that I'm passing on.
So by listening to you, knowledge that it's new because it's coming from you, I'm not remembering, just getting that as a first impression, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it tells me that your mind has something that I cannot see, right? I can hear it as it comes.
Yeah.
So my reality extends one step further. I conclude that reality is also what it is in your mind.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's not only what I see and touch, which is tangible, but my reality is expanded because there's more.
There's more. There's
Right?
always an infinite more. Yeah.
I don't get that from a stone or from a dog or an animal,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe I can get the impression the animal is hungry, but I'm listening to you, and I see there's knowledge, and I can have to conclude it's real. So my reality also includes intangibles.
includes intelligence.
Intangibles, things I don't touch,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Which is flowing as you speak.
Yeah, that's, it includes, the real, if you want to say, if you want to get closer to the reality, you have to sort of eliminate the body and feelings and personality and all that. And that's what goes from life to life, and that's what we're trying to reflect in our own behavior.
The majority of us, when we hear someone talking
Mhm.
with new information or knowledge, right?
Mhm.
We interpret it.
We interpret.
Yeah, it may be something interesting,
Mhm.
something feasible, I can believe,
Mhm.
or maybe I can hear something that I don't agree, right?
Mhm.
Or I may get impressions,
Mhm.
right or wrong,
Mhm.
misinterpretations, right or wrong, right?
Yeah.
Of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Even intention. I may conclude that you have an intention, right?
It's like that, we were talking about, in the brain, it keeps making these taking pictures and making impressions. We could we have the same pictures, I guess. I guess if you have the same pictures, but the more you make those kinds of judgments and so forth, the clearer that picture becomes. Is that clear?
I had another interesting thought listening to this on reality, because I really feel the mind gets on our way. Because like there is speaker, and that's reality because everyone confirms it.
Mhm.
Now in the speaker's mind, there is an entire reality that I'm trying to perceive through the words and what he means and what's the agenda and does it reconcile with my beliefs, and it's trying to analyze all of this.
Yeah.
Now when you think of the animal kingdom, they don't get caught up in this because they just perceive your hormones, your temperature, your stress levels, and they have much better reading of the hidden reality. Because we read hidden reality of another person through mind analysis, and the animals read it through a chemical, as you've mentioned, the chemical life, because we all excrete different hormones, temperatures, stress levels that they can perceive.
We have too much to think about.
Our mind really gets in the way of consuming correct information. We get lost in it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how you classify the mind or brain, but I guess it's kind of both things. If your mind is not reflecting the brain's, the mind is controlling the brain. So, and they have to work in unison.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mhm.
I guess is what you said applies to both of them until the mind is effective and can control the brain properly.
Yeah. Very interesting. I can give an example of how animal kingdom and humans perceive reality in each other. Like with the animal, if you come to the animal smiling and want to pet animal, and inside you're thinking, hey, this beast is too hairy and dirty, and I'm afraid of this animal, the animal will not believe your smile. It will say, I feel stress hormones. Get away. Bad feeling. That reality is bad. But between ourselves and our interactions, we completely confuse everything. We smile and we feel something else. We've covered all of the feelings, and our reality perception of each other becomes so twisted. So at some point you say, how can we ever come to any unified perception of reality? Because we deceive each other with our mind, and we lost capability of reading biochemical signals with that.
And that's on the personal level. Then we got to go to the collective level, all of our minds together, which is another talk in itself too. But that what you're saying is very valid. That I can say a certain word, whatever, a certain sentence, and you interpret that based on your experience. And I interpret it based on my experience. So we have all these experiences running together, getting in the way or whatever it may be. And then we have the collective, great nature, or whatever, is a collective of all these thoughts. So, yeah, it's every person, the way I see it, contributes to this clarity. What we're trying, we have to do it on an individual basis and reflect it in the world.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, if this was easy, we would have a whole different world.
Mhm.
But we are here to learn something. And that's when we go through this experience, putting the teaching into practice in the human, especially the human side, because we have all this to consider that maybe the animals don't. But if we just think about the animals, what you're saying reminded me of a story about a lion. The lion was raised in captivity and then released to the wild. Now, this person who took care of this lion did their job, and he got fed every day, and whatever it was. He appreciated this person's effort, and the person went out in the field where the lion was, and the lion came running over to him like he was going to eat him, but what the other person would think anyhow. But he wanted to commune with the person. He came over and they had this thing going between them. So he's talking about lions being able to perceive stuff. That to me gets he can recognize in his level what you said. You talked about the whether you intend is it's good to you, and sometimes very frequently we can't interpret somebody else's there. Sometimes we can't even interpret our own. But yeah, that's what we have to contend with. We have to bring that together, and if we just work within the work within the balance, that means that we're perfected thinking processes. That's what I was getting at. Not only do we have the animal thinking process within us, but we also all of this diverse stuff that we get involved in as humans get affected as well. And then we become a master. And there's plenty of room at the top. That's different than the experience in the work world here. But the way I understand it, masters are developed. They are not they're just made. Nothing.
So another thought I was having, first thought was having mind really a grand mistake. But then maybe it is the stage through which we have to go to unify with soul and evolve. This is this painful period of struggling with one's mind. Or maybe it was a mistake. Maybe we're not supposed to have it.
Maybe not supposed to have.
Maybe we're not supposed to have the mind. Maybe it was like the mistake, like the error in Gnostics.
Well, without the mind, we don't have anything. Then we have what we have. We have only the brain would only be in the physical world without the mind, because the mind pulls up that together.
Creates invisible reality.
That's why you have to have the mind and the brain working together. And that's what we're here for. As simple as that.
I have another thought, like about the mind, that we have the mind so we could develop, we can advance, we can create. But then I think of like dolphins. They live in the ocean. They don't need to build houses because ocean is their house.
That's right.
Why do we constantly need to build something for ourselves to protect ourselves? Why we don't live in the world like animals do? Like we constantly overthink and overbuild and
We overdo everything. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like why would dolphin build a house? The whole ocean is his house. He's happy there. The
Yeah.
whole world is our house.
You don't
We
have to
keep-
cut out a part of the
building
ocean and say, this is mine.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's cool.
Thank you. It was very thought provoking. Many I keep looking at the pointers and keep coming
Yeah.
back to it.
Well, this will be published in the, in your PDC website. You can go and get this. Because, I mean, I can't remember all this at one time, and I've been through it all the time. It's something that you have to just grapple with, because some of the stuff just seems so foreign to our everyday life, and you just have to pay attention. I mean, remember when you get through the higher is when we are unselfish, the lower is the selfish part. That's the easy way to start.
And these 20 steps of evolution of the soul, what is the source?
What is the soul?
Source.
The source, the source is not oversimplified. It's what's in the secret doctrine and the.
Okay, so
yeah.
it's right.
There's a combination of this, well, primarily this, and ISIS has studies in ISIS and veils, we're not mentioning it. And that's also in there. So these are the main books, and this is primarily.
Or you mean what the source of the soul?
No.
I'm thinking of that.
No, I was asking a basic question.
All the soul, the source of, not the source of the talk, but source of the soul itself.
The source of the soul is life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Then you won't, then get into argue about what the soul is. Well, the soul is life.
Yeah.
And it, an individual soul, it's more, it's got a little bit of life, it's got life in it, but it's also got the selfishness in there too. And that's what we have to get out. We have to understand that we are part of the all, and whatever actions we take affects ourselves and others around us.
There was an interesting book I read a while ago about why we or animals become selfish, because we feel that we need to be selfish to preserve our life, that we will not exist if we're not selfish. And then there was an example of one species, I don't remember which animal it was, but their DNA programming was to survival of that whole species, not individual within the species. So it was interesting that if there will be any threat, their programming was to sacrifice themselves to save the others. So it was very interesting that it was part of DNA where they were coded not as individual, but a whole species, that there wouldn't be a thought for that animal to sort of die itself to make sure that the whole herd lives.
Yeah.
And we are more programmed as individual species.
In effect, we do that too, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
We look out for our families, and we sometimes have to make that sacrifice of ourselves. And our family has to grow to the moral family. Right now, it's within a smaller circle. So we got to keep expanding that circle. Well, I think, let's see, why don't we take a break, and then we'll come back and study the data. Yeah, Kathy, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna add that we have to remember that we're still evolving and that's a long process. Like some religions say we have a soul, and Theosophy says we are an evolving soul, and that's pretty amazing in and of itself. But you know, we have to be patient with ourselves and not get discouraged
Absolutely.
too easily because it is a long process.
Actually, you mentioned something that made me think about it in the reading too. Yeah, we are an evolving soul, but yeah, as we evolve, we become more perfect if we try to do it. But we can also evolve the other way too. It's up to us as when we arrive on this earth. And then,
That's true.
then we're in Devacon, and we assimilate on what we have learned in this life and in prior lives.
I was assuming self-induced and self-devised efforts in the correct direction, but yeah, you're right. There is a danger of, you know, it going in the opposite direction. But I think if our intention is right, as long as we keep trying, that evolution takes place, you know, guided by our karma.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Thank you.
What we're here for, and we will stop and go back to our study of the Gita. We won't record that because it's too difficult to do that. So we turn off the recording now. Thank you.
I'm putting it on pause and we'll be back in 5 to 10 minutes. I'd say 10 minutes.